The mail usually comes after noon. I rarely even notice it, just the faint click of the mailbox lid down by the road, the sound of the truck driving away. It's a ritual so routine my brain doesn't register it. But today was different. I was watering the hydrangeas by the porch when our mail carrier, a kid named Dave with hair perpetually tousled by the Texas wind, didn't just drop the mail in the box. He got out of his truck, holding a single envelope, and walked up the path toward me. "Afternoon, Mrs. Ritas," he said, holding it out. "This one's certified. I need a signature." I set down the watering can. Certified mail? I wasn't expecting anything. The envelope was standard business size, made of thick, expensive-feeling cream paper. In the top left corner was an official seal, an eagle clutching the scales of justice, and the embossed words, Travis County Court. My heart gave an awkward, heavy lurch, as if it had missed a step on a phantom staircase. "Thank you, Dave." My voice was steady as I signed his electronic pad. My hand didn't shake. Years of self-control. He left, and I remained standing in the oppressive heat, holding this paper rectangle. It felt heavier than it should, thicker, as if it contained not just a letter, but something with physical, crushing weight. I ran a finger over my name, printed in perfectly crisp, black letters. Carol and Ritas. It was correct, but it felt addressed to someone else, and I was just the unlucky intermediary who'd received it. In the manicured silence of my Austin suburb, this formal, cold object seemed like an artifact from another, hostile world. I brought it inside and placed it on the granite countertop of the kitchen island, directly in a beam of light from the window over the sink. It lay there, defiantly alien, while I brewed myself a cup of chamomile tea. I decided to open it later. Fear is an irrational thing. The best way to manage it is to follow your routine. My day was scheduled, not on paper, but in muscle memory. Since Frank died 2 years ago, these rituals had become my armor. Mornings in the garden. Afternoons on the project. That's what I called my work on the family archive, dozens of boxes of old slides, 8mm film reels, VHS tapes. The legacy of a half-century of life. My 25-year career at the museum as a media archivist had taught me one thing: memory is fragile unless it's cataloged. I went to my office, where my iMac screen glowed with the Adobe Bridge program. On the display was a photo of a young Frank from 1979. He was smiling, squinting in the sun against the backdrop of Palo Duro Canyon. I zoomed in. Kodachrome 64 film. The grain was perfect. I methodically began filling in the metadata fields. Creator, Carol Ritas. Date created, May 17, 1979. Location, Palo Duro Canyon State Park, TX, USA. Camera, Minolta XG1. Lens, 50mm f/1.7. In the description field, I added, Frank on our first road trip together. 3 months before he proposed. He's wearing my favorite denim jacket, which he later lost when we moved. Every detail, every tag, every keyword was an anchor driven into the past. This wasn't just nostalgia. It was a fight against entropy, against forgetting. My stepsons, Frank's children from his first marriage, never understood. "Why do you bother with all that old stuff, Carol?" Mark would say, "Just upload it to the cloud." He didn't get that the cloud is chaos. Without structure, without context, without the truth embedded in the data, photos decay into digital noise. I switched to another folder. Mark's wedding. There he was, so young, nervously adjusting his tie. Frank stood beside him, proud and happy. I remembered that day. I was the one who insisted Frank mend his relationship with his son after a bitter divorce. I helped them find common ground, built bridges over a chasm of resentment. This house, the one Frank and I bought after we married, had always been open to his children. I never tried to replace their mother. I just wanted them to have a father, and for my husband to have a family. Looking at those pictures, I thought about how a family is an archive in itself, a collection of shared memories, joys, unspoken grievances. And if you don't tend to that archive, it deteriorates. The data gets corrupted. History becomes distorted. I had always believed in the truth of facts, in the ability to separate objective reality from emotional interpretation. My job taught me that. It doesn't matter what the art historian thinks about a painting. What matters is when it was painted with what pigments on what canvas. Facts are stubborn things. It started about 3 months ago, so subtly I didn't even register it at first. The phone calls from Mark and his wife, Sarah, became more frequent. They used to call once every couple of weeks, a perfunctory check-in. Now, Mark might call in the middle of a Tuesday just to see how I was. "Hey, Carol, it's me. Just checking in," he'd say, his voice full of an uncharacteristic concern. "I'm fine, Mark, thanks. I was about to head to the nursery for some new lavender plants. Alone? Is the car okay? Have you checked the oil?" At first, I took it as genuine care. Frank was never one to fuss, and maybe his son was trying to make up for that. But the questions slowly began to encroach deeper into my personal territory. He started asking what I'd had for dinner, if I'd remembered to take my vitamins, if I'd paid the electricity bill on time. It was sweet, but also vaguely patronizing, as if he were talking to a forgetful teenager, not a grown woman. Then came the visits. A month ago, Mark showed up on my doorstep on a Saturday morning unannounced. "I was in the neighborhood, thought I'd drop by," he said, walking in. "I remember you saying the kitchen faucet was dripping. Let me take a look." He did, in fact, fix the faucet. But while he was busy under the sink, Sarah, who had come with him, conducted a full audit of my refrigerator. "Oh, Carol, this yogurt is a day past its date. Let me toss it for you," she'd say with an affectionate smile. She reorganized the cans in my pantry so everything's easier to reach and wiped down shelves she decided I might not be able to get to. Their help was intrusive, suffocating. They moved through my house as if it were already their responsibility. I felt like an exhibit in my own museum, being inspected by the Board of Trustees. The culmination was their attempt to help me with my computer. 2 weeks ago, Mark arrived with a laptop under his arm. "Carol, there are so many scams online targeting seniors. I want to install some protection software for you. It'll block dangerous sites and monitor your system's health." "Thank you, Mark, but I have a decent firewall and I'm quite familiar with cybersecurity," I replied politely. I didn't mention that I once designed the security protocols for a national digital archive. "This is different," he insisted. "This program gives me remote access. If anything goes wrong, I can log in instantly and fix it. You won't even have to call anyone." He spoke to me in the tone one uses to explain to a child why they can't touch a power outlet. The suggestion of giving him total control over my computer, my work tool, my window to the world, was so outrageous I was momentarily speechless. "I appreciate your concern, Mark, but I prefer to manage my own devices," I said, as firmly as I could. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face, quickly replaced by a wounded look. The final incident was last week at a dinner they had insisted on. Sarah brought her famous pie, which tasted like sweetened cardboard. "Carol, we were talking," Mark began as I poured the tea. "Maybe it would be a good idea to add my name to your bank accounts? Not to control anything, God no. Just as a precaution. If, God forbid, something happened to you, I could pay the bills until everything was sorted out. We don't want you to be vulnerable. Your father would have wanted us to look out for you," Sarah added, placing her palm on my hand. "He wouldn't have wanted you to carry this burden alone." Using Frank's memory was a blow below the belt. They were leveraging my grief, my sense of obligation. I could feel a net slowly, methodically tightening around me. Every word, every caring gesture was designed to convince me of my own incompetence. I politely but unequivocally refused. That evening, as they were leaving, I noticed for the first time how cold and calculating Sarah's expression was when she thought I wasn't looking. This was no longer concern. This was a strategy. Before returning to the kitchen counter, I sat down at my computer and opened Donors Choose. I have long supported projects in low-income schools. Today, I found a request from a teacher in San Antonio. She needed graphics tablets for her digital art class. "Help my students turn their imagination into pixels," her request read. I smiled. Pixels. My world. I anonymously funded the entire project. The small act restored my sense of control. A feeling that I could still affect change in the world, invest in something real, in the future. It was an antidote to the unsettling conversations and their hidden agendas. Darkness fell. The automatic system switched on the landscape lighting along the garden path. The house was quiet, filled only with the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the living room, Frank's clock. I walked to the kitchen. The envelope was still on the counter, white and ominous in the artificial light. I couldn't put it off any longer. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands were perfectly steady, but the water in the glass trembled almost imperceptibly. I ran through the possibilities in my head. A summons for jury duty? A notice about an inheritance from a distant relative I never knew? A fine for an overgrown tree branching into public space? Every scenario was absurd. Deep down, in that place where intuition lives, I knew it was something else. Something personal and terrifying. With my favorite letter opener, the one with the mother-of-pearl handle that Frank had given me, I carefully slit the envelope. Inside was a thick sheaf of documents, stapled together. The first page made my breath catch in my throat. Petition for appointment of an emergency guardian and issuance of a temporary conservatorship over the person and estate of Carol and Ritas. The words swam before my eyes. I blinked hard, forcing them back into focus. Petitioner, Mark Thomas Vance. Grounds, progressive cognitive decline, loss of contact with reality, inability to manage her own finances and daily affairs, exacerbated by chronic alcoholism. Alcoholism? I don't drink anything stronger than a glass of wine at Christmas. My doctor told me at my last checkup that my lab results were better than his. This had to be some monstrous, insane mistake. I frantically flipped through the pages of legalese until I found the section titled Exhibits. It referred to Exhibit A, video evidence. Tucked inside a small paper sleeve in the envelope was a black USB flash drive. Cheap, unbranded. My legs felt weak. I walked to my office, sat in my chair, and inserted the drive into the iMac's USB port. A new icon appeared on my desktop. It contained a single file, evidence_01.mp4. I double-clicked. My living room appeared on the screen. My armchair. And me. Or rather, a creature that looked like me. Its face was puffy and red. Its eyes were cloudy, unfocused. Its hair was a mess. This woman, me, was holding a bottle of Jack Daniels, something I had never once bought in my life. She was trying to speak, but only incoherent mumbles came out. She swayed, and the bottle fell to the carpet with a dull thud. The camera, positioned somewhere near a bookshelf, kept recording as she stared blankly into space. I watched frozen. My brain, trained by decades of analyzing images, was tearing itself apart. On one hand, I saw my home, my clothes, my face. On the other, I knew, with absolute certainty, this had never happened. It was a lie. A perfectly constructed lie. I looked closer. The lighting. It was wrong. The shadows on the face were too harsh, inconsistent with the position of the lamp in the living room. The lip movements. They were slightly out of sync with the garbled audio. And the eyes. They were empty. Not a drunken emptiness, but a digital one. Lifeless. It was a deep fake. The realization came not as a flash of light, but as an icy wave, rising slowly from my feet to my heart. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an attack. My stepson, the son of the man I had loved more than life itself, had created this monstrous forgery to have me declared insane and take everything I had. The silence in the house was no longer peaceful. It was deafening, oppressive. And in that silence, I heard a single, distinct sound, the quiet but furious beat of my own heart, preparing for war. My first instinct was to delete the file, to erase that hideous, lying image from my computer as if exorcising a demon from my home. But my hand froze over the mouse. 25 years in the archives had taught me the cardinal rule: you never destroy the primary source. Not when it's ugly. Especially when it's ugly. This file wasn't just an insult anymore, it was a crime scene. And I was its custodian. I didn't sleep that night. The shock had subsided, leaving behind a hollow, ringing void where a single question echoed: why? I got up from my chair and walked to the window. My garden, my sanctuary, was drowning in thick shadows. It looked alien, unsafe. The house was no longer a fortress. Its walls had been breached. The enemy had been inside without breaking a single window or picking a single lock. He had invaded my home through pixels and bytes, leaving behind a filth that couldn't be washed away. I replayed their visits, their caring words over and over in my mind. Every phrase that had seemed merely awkward now took on a sinister, calculated meaning. Their concern for my health, my finances, my safety, it wasn't concern. It was reconnaissance. They were gathering data, testing the waters, building a narrative for a judge. And I, blinded by my faith in family, had let them. I went back to the computer. I played the video again. And again. I muted the sound, unwilling to listen to the generated, drunken babble. Now I was watching not as a victim, but as an archivist, an analyst. I opened QuickTime Player and began a frame-by-frame review. There. At the 14-second mark, as the fake me turns her head, the outline of her hair blurs for an instant, leaving a faint digital trail. A compression artifact? Maybe. But it looked more like a rendering error, the algorithm failing to perfectly merge the generated face with the source video. And there was more. The reflection in the glass of the bookcase behind me. It was indistinct, but what was moving in it wasn't my shape, but some dark, formless silhouette. They had used a video of the empty room and superimposed my image onto it. I took screenshots, circled the anomalies in red, and saved them to a new folder. A rage as cold and clear as winter air was displacing the pain. They thought I was a foolish old woman. They had overlooked one thing. I had spent my entire life working with images. I knew their secrets. At dawn, my eyes red from lack of sleep and the glow of the monitor. I knew my professional skills and quiet fury weren't enough. I was on a legal battlefield, and the weapons here weren't magnifying glasses and photo editors. They were statutes and precedents. I needed a lawyer. Not the kind, elderly gentleman who had drawn up Frank's and my will. I needed someone different. A warrior. Someone who spoke the language of technology, who wouldn't be spooked by phrases like artificial intelligence and generative adversarial network. I sat down at the computer and began my search. Not a Google search for Good Lawyer Austin. I took a different path. I opened LexisNexis and Westlaw, the legal databases I still had access to from my occasional consulting work for the university. I wasn't looking for ads. I was looking for case law. Court cases in Texas from the last 5 years involving digital defamation, evidence tampering, and conservatorship abuse. I read judges' rulings, analyzed arguments. And one name kept appearing in the most complex, technologically tangled cases. Anya Sharma. A Stanford Law graduate, a partner at a small but aggressive firm downtown. Her profile photo showed a young woman, maybe 35, with sharp, intelligent eyes and an expression that said, "I don't believe a word you're saying until you prove it." Exactly what I needed. I found her office number and called at 9 a.m. sharp. Law offices of Sharma and Associates, a crisp voice answered. "Hello, I'd like to speak with Ms. Anya Sharma. My name is Carol Ritas. My case concerns a petition for an emergency conservatorship, filed on the basis of fabricated digital evidence." I said it as calmly and methodically as I would describe the metadata of a photograph. There was a pause on the other end. "Please hold one moment." 30 seconds later, a new voice came on the line, brisk and clear. "Anya Sharma." "Ms. Sharma," I began, "I'm being sued, and the primary evidence is a video I have identified with a high degree of confidence as a deepfake. I have the file. And I've already conducted a preliminary visual analysis." Another silence, but this time it was filled with interest, not shock. "Mrs. Ritas," she said finally, "can you be in my office in an hour?" Anya Sharma's office was nothing like the traditional mahogany-paneled dens of old law firms. It was a bright, minimalist space with floor-to-ceiling windows. Anya herself was the embodiment of energy. She wasted no time on pleasantries. "Coffee?" "Water," she asked, gesturing me to a chair. "Let's get right to it. Show me what you have." I handed her a copy of the petition and the flash drive. As she read, her face was a mask of concentration. Then she plugged the drive into her laptop. I watched her watch the video. Her gaze was just like mine had been the night before, sharp, analytical. "They're moving fast," she said, closing the laptop. An emergency petition is a blitzkrieg. They're counting on a judge seeing this, being horrified, and immediately signing a temporary order to protect you. He'll appoint a temporary guardian, mark, of course, and freeze your assets. A full hearing won't happen for weeks or months. By then, you'll be completely stripped of your resources and your voice. It's a standard tactic in conservatorship abuse cases. Her words confirmed my worst fears. The system was designed to act quickly, and that speed was their primary weapon. But it's a fake, I said. I believe you, Anya replied. But a judge isn't an expert in digital forensics. He'll see an elderly woman and a whiskey bottle. Our job isn't just to claim it's a fake. Our job is to prove it so definitively that the judge is left with no doubt whatsoever. We need a digital forensics expert. And we need to move faster than they do. She looked me directly in the eye. Carol, I'll be frank with you. This is going to be expensive. And it's going to get ugly. They've attacked your character. We have to be prepared to fight back, only our weapon won't be lies. It will be the truth. The meticulous, proven, irrefutable truth. For the first time in 24 hours, I felt a surge of strength, not fear. I had an ally. Before we hire an expert, let me do the initial analysis, I told Anya. This is my field. I can save us time and money. Anya raised a surprised eyebrow but nodded. Back home, I got to work. I copied the video file to a secure external drive to work on a duplicate and preserve the original. Then I opened the terminal, the command line interface on my iMac. To most people, it's a terrifying black screen with a blinking cursor. To me, it was a precision surgical tool. I used a utility called exiftool, a powerful program for reading and writing metadata. I typed the command exiftool, AG1 evidence _01.mp4. A stream of information instantly flooded the screen, the file's digital DNA, and I immediately saw what I was looking for. LAF is a library from the FFmpeg suite, popular with developers and video professionals. This wasn't a file from an iPhone or a consumer camera. It was a file that had been through a complex encoding process. But the crucial part was the creation date. August 17, 2025 at 2:43 in the morning, 2 days before I received the letter. The petition claimed my condition had been deteriorating for many months. A lie. The first big, provable lie. The file had been freshly baked in the middle of the night. I kept digging. The file was missing any data about the camera manufacturer, model, or lens information that any recording device automatically embeds. Instead, there was data about the codec and bitrate that suggested the file had been compressed and exported multiple times. I documented every step, took screenshots, and wrote a report. My fear had been completely replaced by the cold thrill of a researcher on the trail of a discovery. But Mark and Sarah weren't sitting still. Their plan targeted not only the court, but my entire community. On Tuesday, Martha, my neighbor and a friend from my garden club, called me. Carol, dear, is everything all right? Her voice was thick with alarm. Sarah called me. She was so worried. She said you haven't been yourself lately. Something about drinking. The blood drained from my face. They had begun their smear campaign. They were calling my friends, planting seeds of doubt, isolating me. Then on Wednesday, the worst happened. I was at the grocery store, and at the checkout, my credit card was declined. Insufficient funds, the cashier said, embarrassed. That was impossible. I called the bank right then and there. Yes, Mrs. Ritas, a dispassionate clerk's voice said. A temporary hold has been placed on your primary account by order of the Travis County Court. It's a standard procedure in a conservatorship petition to protect the assets. Protect. They had frozen my money to protect it from me. I stood in the middle of the busy store, holding a useless piece of plastic, and felt the floor drop out from under me. They had stripped me not just of my reputation, but of my ability to live. The walls were closing in. That night, I sat in the darkness of my living room. My money was frozen. My friends were suspicious. The family I had dedicated a part of my life to was trying to bury me in a legal grave. The loneliness was a physical presence. I walked to the fireplace, to the photo of Frank, little Mark, and me at Disneyland. Frank was holding him on his shoulders, and they were both laughing. The pain of betrayal was as sharp as a shard of glass in my heart. Could I really fight this? Could this ugly lie be stronger than me, than my life, than my truth? I felt so old and so tired. I closed my eyes, letting the despair wash over me. But then, from somewhere deep inside, something else rose up. Stubbornness. Anger. Frank's voice in my head, always saying, "Read us's, don't quit." I opened my eyes and looked at my reflection in the dark window pane. I didn't see a broken old woman. I saw a woman they were trying to erase. And she would not let them. Even when it felt like all was lost, I didn't give up. This was no longer just a fight for my house or my money. This was a fight for my name, for my story. That thought about my story set me back to the computer. If they were going to create a false history for me, I would counter it with my own, the real one, backed by facts. I started combing through my own archives from the past year, photos, emails, receipts, bank statements. I was building an irrefutable timeline of my life. Here I am at a museum volunteer event. Here are the checks from restaurants where I dined with friends. Here are my charitable donations. It was all proof of my activity, my lucidity. And that's when I found it, looking through my sent email folder. An email from Mark dated 4 months earlier. The subject line, urgent conversation. He wrote about an incredible investment opportunity, a green energy startup that was about to take off. He needed to borrow $150,000. Urgently. I scrolled down to find my reply. It was polite but firm. I wrote that I was happy for his enthusiasm, but before investing that kind of money, I would need to see a business plan, financial projections, information on the other investors. I offered to help him prepare those documents. I had acted like a responsible adult, not an ATM. His reply came an hour later. A single sentence, "I see. I expected more from you." There it was. The motive. In black and white. This wasn't about my well-being. This was revenge for being told no. I immediately forwarded the entire exchange to Anya with a note. "I think you'll need this." On Friday evening, 3 days before the preliminary hearing, Anya called. Her voice was tense. "Carol, I have news from our forensics expert, a Dr. Elias Vance, no relation, ironically. It's good and bad." "Start with the good," I said, my knuckles white around the phone. "The good news is, he confirms 100% that it's a deepfake. He found markers specific to an open-source AI network. He can tear that video to shreds in court. We're in the game." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "And the bad?" There was a pause. "The bad news is he found something else. In the audio track. Buried under the layer of generated mumbling, he discovered a second, hidden audio stream. It's encrypted, but the file's signature belongs to a cutting-edge AI voice cloning software. It's a program that can create a complete digital model of your voice after analyzing just a few minutes of speech." I was silent, trying to process what she was saying. "Carol," Anya said slowly, and for the first time, I heard something like fear in her voice. "They weren't just trying to frame you. It looks like they were building a complete digital double of you. This deepfake might just be the tip of the iceberg. The question is, what else have they done or said in your voice?" The weekend before the hearing passed in a strange, almost surreal quiet. The house, which only a week ago had felt like hostile territory, was my command center again. The kitchen table was buried under printouts, legal documents, and my own notes. The rage and fear had settled into a cold, detached focus. It was a familiar feeling. It's how I felt before a major museum exhibition opened. The chaos of artifacts, labels, and floor plans had to be shaped into a coherent, logical, and truthful story. Only this time, the exhibit was my life. I spent most of my time on video calls with Anya. We rehearsed. She fired hostile questions at me, the kind Mark's lawyer would ask, and I practiced answering them calmly, unemotionally, sticking to the facts. "You are a witness, Carol, not a victim," she repeated. "Your power is in your clarity and precision. They want to show the court a crazy old woman. We are going to show them an archivist." But the shadow of the new threat, the cloned voice, hung over all our preparations. What had they done? Who had they called? What words had they put in my mouth? The thought was more terrifying than the fake video. The video distorted my image, but the voice could steal my agency. Anya and I had filed some requests, but we knew we might not get answers by Monday. We were walking into that courtroom knowing the enemy might be holding a weapon we couldn't even see. That night, I sat in my office and looked at the family photos arranged chronologically on my screen. There was Frank. There were his children. There was our shared history, which I had so carefully preserved. Now, I had to prove that this history was mine and that no one had the right to rewrite it. Courtroom 4B of the Travis County Courthouse had none of the drama of Hollywood. No dark wood paneling or soaring ceilings. Just a functional, soulless room with beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and the smell of weak coffee and disinfectant. It was a place where human tragedies were converted into case numbers and stacks of paper. Mark and Sarah were already seated at a table with their lawyer, a man with a slicked-back hair and an expensive suit. They were dressed in muted, dark colors, performing a play called The Grieving Family. Mark wouldn't look at me. His shoulders slumped. He looked exhausted, and for a fleeting moment, I almost felt sorry for him. But then I met Sarah's eyes. There was no grief or regret in them, only a cold, serpentine resolve, and a faint, almost imperceptible contempt. In that instant, I knew she had been the architect of this plan. Mark was just a weak, desperate tool in her hands. Judge Henderson, a woman in her 60s with sharp, weary eyes, entered. She shuffled through the documents. "All right," she said, peering over her glasses. Case number PB 25-1138. Petition for an emergency conservatorship. "Mr. Collins," she said to their lawyer, "you may begin." Collins stood and began to speak. His voice was soft and persuasive. He painted a picture of my slow decline after Frank's death. Loneliness, depression, alcohol as an escape. My clients, he said, acted not out of greed, but out of love and fear. The fear of losing the only family they have left. And then he delivered the blow. "Your Honor, so you may understand the gravity of the situation, we ask permission to play a short video taken by my client in Mrs. Ritas' home." On the large screen mounted to the wall, my face appeared. Distorted, drunk. The room fell silent, the only sound the generated mumbling from the speakers. I saw the judge's expression change. It registered shock and genuine concern. The lie was powerful. It was working. When the video ended, Collins sat down with the air of a man who had just proven a theorem. Judge Henderson looked at me with open pity. "MS. Sharma," she said. Anya stood. "Your Honor, that is a very disturbing video. So disturbing, in fact, that it raises the question, why did it surface at this exact moment?" She didn't attack the video. She came at it from the side. "I would like to present to the court an email exchange between my client and the petitioner, Mr. Vance, dated this past April." The image on the screen changed. The emails appeared. Mark's request for $150,000. And my polite, reasoned refusal. "As you can see, Your Honor," Anya continued, "just a few weeks before Mrs. Ritas supposedly began this rapid decline, she was acting as a perfectly rational and financially responsible individual. She didn't just say no, she offered to help him prepare a business plan. Her stepson's response was chilly, and shortly thereafter, he suddenly began to have extreme concerns for her well-being. Anya was creating a new context. She was reframing their concern as motive. Then she called me to the stand. I walked to the witness box, feeling the weight of every gaze in the room. I sat, swore the oath, and looked at Anya. "Mrs. Ritas," she began, "please tell the court about your professional career before you retired." Calmly and clearly, I told them about my 25 years at the museum, about digitizing collections, working with databases, about the protocols for authenticating digital assets. I spoke the language of facts. I presented the court with a timeline of my life for the past 6 months, supported by dozens of documents, receipts, geotagged photos, video call logs. I was building a wall of truth, brick by brick, against their tidal wave of lies. "The defense has no further questions, Your Honor," Anya said. "But we would like to call our expert witness, Dr. Elias Vance." A tall, bespectacled man entered the courtroom. He was a digital forensics expert with an impeccable reputation. "Dr. Vance, Anya began. Did you examine the video file submitted by the petitioner? I did. And what was your conclusion? My conclusion is unequivocal, Dr. Vance said in a level voice. The video is a synthetic forgery, commonly known as a deepfake. A murmur went through the room. Mark's lawyer jumped up to object, but the judge waved him down. Explain to the court how you reached this conclusion, Anya requested. The video appeared on the screen again, but this time overlaid with colored lines and graphs. First, the metadata, Dr. Vance said, as the lines of code I had found that first night were displayed. The file was created and encoded with FFmpeg software on August 17th at 2:43 a.m. It is completely missing any camera-specific data, which is abnormal for a home video but typical for a file generated on a computer. Then he moved to the visual artifacts I had noticed. He zoomed in, showing the digital noise around the outline of my head, the unnatural shadows, the microscopic inconsistencies in the reflection in the glass. He turned their star piece of evidence into a case study in digital fraud. It's a reasonably high-quality fake, he concluded. But the algorithms always leave a trail. It's impossible for a machine to perfectly replicate the chaos and imperfection of the real world. The atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted. Pity for Mark had turned to suspicion. Sympathy for me had turned to respect. Collins tried to discredit the expert on cross-examination, but it was a pathetic display. The game was clearly lost. But Anya wasn't finished. Your Honor, I have one final question for Dr. Vance, she said. You mentioned in your report an anomaly in the audio track. Could you elaborate? Yes, the expert affirmed. Beneath the primary audio, I discovered a hidden, encrypted audio stream. A signature analysis showed it was created using a state-of-the-art AI voice cloning software. Judge Henderson frowned. Voice cloning? For what purpose? That's the very question we asked ourselves, Your Honor, Anya said. And I believe we found the answer. She placed a new stack of documents on the judge's bench. This is a subpoena for the phone records of Mr. Mark Vance. And this is the audio recording of a call made from his number to the financial firm Charles Schwab 3 weeks ago. It's the firm where Mrs. Ritas holds her retirement portfolio. I asked the court's permission to play the recording. The judge nodded. Anya pressed a key on her laptop. And the courtroom heard my voice. My cadence, my intonation, my manner of speaking. Hello, my name is Carol Ritas, my digital ghost said. I'd like to place an order to sell all shares in my Vanguard 500 index fund. Yes, all of them. And transfer the proceeds to a new account. I looked at Mark. His face had gone chalk white. He knew it was over. Anya stopped the recording. The account to which my cloned voice was ordering the transfer of over $500,000 was opened the day before the call. It was opened in the name of a corporation whose sole officer, as you might have guessed, is Mr. Mark Vance. The silence in the room was absolute. Everyone understood. The deepfake video wasn't the crime. It was the cover story. The smoke screen. The real plan was to rob me blind using my own voice. And if I noticed, the conservatorship petition and the drunken grandma video would explain away all my objections as the ravings of an incompetent mind. This wasn't just a nasty family squabble. It was a cold, calculated, technologically sophisticated felony. Judge Henderson's reaction was furious. Petition denied with prejudice, she snapped, her gavel striking the block. That means you may never file it again. Furthermore, I find that this petition was filed maliciously and with fraudulent intent. I am referring the entirety of this case to the district attorney's office to pursue charges of perjury, evidence tampering, and attempted wire fraud. She looked at Mark and Sarah. Your attempt to use the justice system as a tool to commit a crime is an insult to this court and everything it stands for. 2 bailiffs approached Mark's table. Their performance was over. As they were led out, Mark finally looked at me. There was no remorse in his eyes, only terror and confusion. He still couldn't understand how his clever, brilliant scheme could have fallen apart. He hadn't underestimated me. He had underestimated my obsession with the truth. On the courthouse steps, the sun was blinding. The battle was won. Anya shook my hand. You have grounds for a multi-million-dollar civil suit, Carol. For emotional distress, legal fees. I'll think about it later, I said, feeling nothing but a vast, empty exhaustion. Right now, I just want to go home. Weeks passed. The locks on the doors were changed. Life slowly returned to its rhythm, but the scars remained. I knew that Mark and Sarah were facing serious prison time. Their lives were ruined. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Only a heavy, lingering sorrow. One day, a letter arrived. The envelope was addressed in a child's handwriting. It was from Emily, my granddaughter, Mark's daughter. Inside was a short, handwritten note. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm so ashamed of Mom and Dad. I love you." I put the letter aside. It was perhaps the one bridge that hadn't been burned to the ground. But it would take a long, long time to be able to cross it. That evening, I sat in my office. My monitor was filled with folders of family photos. Thousands of files documenting happy moments that, it turned out, had never really been happy at all. My hand moved toward the delete key. Erase them. Erase the lie. But I stopped. To delete them would be to distort history. To let them make a liar out of me. I wouldn't do it. Instead, I selected all the photographs that included Mark and Sarah. I opened the metadata editor, and in the keywords field, I added one final tag: relationship, status, terminated. Date, August 12th, 2025. Reason, betrayal. It was the cold, dispassionate act of an archivist. I wasn't destroying the past. I was simply cataloging it correctly. I wasn't afraid of digital ghosts anymore. I understood that technology is only a tool. It can be used to create lies, but it can also be used to prove the truth. My life's work had been to preserve the authenticity of records, and in the end, that is what saved me. My family was destroyed, my future uncertain. But I had defended my name, my memory, and my story. I sat in the silence of my house, which was now mine again, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. Not a happy peace, not a joyful one, but the sober, bitter, and hard-won peace of a survivor.